What is going on, everyone, and welcome back to another Black Desert video. So today we hit 500 contribution points, and that's a big number. So I wanted to do an update. I think the last time we did it was a couple months ago on all my node setup and how everything is connected. This is probably going to be the last one I make until Edania Part 2, assuming there's something worth talking about over there. But I think a lot of this is the same. I switch up a few things every now and then. And there's a worker man site that actually tracks everything, which is the most profitable nodes as well. So with that said, a lot of these things I tailored towards myself because there's a lot of materials that I just don't like collecting. So having a node going off just helps that. So what I'd recommend for you guys is finding the nodes that, you know, might be a bottleneck for you and just add those. But if you're just looking for, you know, quick tips, maybe if you're a beginner, you want to get some high value nodes for things you might use in the future, that's what we'll talk about as well. With that said, let's just go by region and go from the starter regions all the way to the new ones, just because I feel like, you know, early things are good to invest in, and let's talk about that. Okay, so with that said, let's start with Balanos, which is down here in Velia, and then we'll talk about, I don't really think I have anything important connected to Olvia or the Academy. But anyway, starting over here, Velia, the important ones I would say are the most profitable are the ones that give saps. Saps timbers are very high value. I guess it depends on the timbers, but saps are generally max price. Chicken meat and eggs are generally always wanted for crafting, and especially for people who are looking to boost their contribution points. Getting chicken meat, turning it into grilled bird meat is always good. So like one thing I do is make a lot of grilled bird meat, and then also beer, because you get to byproducts from cooking and you just get more contribution points. And also it's probably something you'll probably need throughout your BDO career. You might as well just make some now, and then you'll never have to worry about it again. So with that said, down here, the ones that I think are important on the farm for chicken meat and eggs. Potatoes are always good, but, you know, ideally you want to look at the prices for saps. Chicken meat and eggs, always good one. And down in the Bartali farm, we have another one for that one. And just other things that I think are important are iron ore and copper. Now, this one, there's probably an abundance of it, just because, you know, everyone has these nodes. These are really early to get ones, especially for new players. But as you move on down into the later game, when you're trying to upgrade alchemy stones, you're probably going to have to make a lot of ingots to upgrade your stones and stuff as well. So I think getting these ores early on is pretty good. They're not really that expensive, even if you don't have it, so it's not really a big deal. But if you just don't want to pay for it later, it's always good to have it yourself. If you want, you can have Spirit's Leaf and Ash Timber over here, just if you're leveling up your processing or something, but more ores. But if you're early on, the thing I would say is high priority are on the farms for chicken meat and eggs. Now, going down into the Heidel Serendia area, there's a lot of... Wait, actually, let's probably look at it like this one. It's probably a little bit easier to just look at it like this. It looks less confusing. So over here, there are a few nodes that you probably won't see by default. So when you go to the farm over here, you're probably going to see... Oh, actually, this one. You're going to see an excavation. If you don't have this on your map, the reason is because you have to talk to the node manager, which is like over here, this person, and then you pay like, what is it, 50 or something energy, and it permanently unlocks the excavation node. So Chase of Nature is extremely valuable. These are high profit, and especially if you are planning on doing any sort of alchemy in the future, always a high value node. But aside from that, in Serendia, things I think I would pick are probably like wheat. If you're, once again, it's kind of like the chicken meat we were talking about, but if you're turning it into beer itself. Flax, if you want to power level processing slowly but surely. And then more wheat and pumpkins are usually stuff you would want. Down into Quarry, more copper and iron ore. Once again, just kind of like mid to late game for me for alchemy, but always pretty decent value nodes if you process them into ingots and everything. So going down into Glish, I believe one we have is Glish Ruins, where you get platinum ore and trace of nature. Both of these items are extremely valuable and worth getting all of the excavation nodes you can find. So yeah. Everything else down here is just timbers, and yeah, timbers and saps are always nice, but a little bit less value than the other ones, which are, you know, depending on how many contribution points you have, it's good to have. All right, so down in Calpheon, let's start with Keplan down here. So the one thing I really wanted was mostly coal, and there are only so many coal nodes in this game, so it's kind of important to get them. Realistically, you could just buy them off the market, but I would rather not, and I would rather just get it myself. So yeah, a bunch of coal nodes over here, and then timbers and spirit leaves. These are pretty high value. Timbers and spirit leaves are always expensive. So down in Keplan, we have this connected. So we're just mostly getting coal and anything else on the side, like ores and, you know, always nice. Calpheon, what we have connected over here is with the northern wheat plantation. We have more wheat and barley. These function very similarly if you're cooking or like making beer. And then a lot of timbers and ores in all these nodes as well. Timbers, ores, and saps, always high value across the board. This one is especially important. Another excavation for trace of nature and platinum. And down over here, we have just more ores and timbers and, you know, just stuff that's nice to have. Birch is kind of fluctuating between high value, and sometimes when there's a lot, people just dunk it and the value goes down, but generally it's a pretty decently valued node. Port Epheria. I don't think these are really worth it, in my opinion. I just have more contribution points than most people, and I had to like figure out things to actually make. So back in the day, I would say about 5-6 years ago, pet food was not readily available on the market like it is now, so we kind of had to just, you know, make it ourselves. And so you want to get a lot of these dried fish, certain ones like the dried pintado. This one will allow you to just cook your own good feed, and that's about it. So I don't think these are super important. These are long nodes that take like 2 hours to just bring back per cycle. But if you don't want to buy like pet food, you can just make this yourself. The important thing will probably be the dried fish and the meats that you'll get down in around here in Velia. So I have another gathering video talking about it, but that's kind of irrelevant. So yeah, either way, Port Epheria, a little bit irrelevant. Might remove these in the future if like Edania Part 2 has some decent nodes, but until then, we just need to, it's better to use your contribution points on something than just let it rot in and like have this number not be 0. Okay, so going down into Trent, this is a very high value area, but it is also kind of out of the way to the point where if you are a new player looking at this, you probably don't want to invest in it early on, simply because there are just a lot of better use items. But if you do have the extra points, these are good to get. So cedar timber is a very high value node. I mostly use it to multi-process things. So like, you see how pine timbers are 1,000, cedars are like 4,000. So if you process that and you know what to do with it, generally high value. More fir timber over here, fir and cedar and bloody tree knots. I believe if you do any sort of sailing, and these are pretty high value, along with making elixirs and harmonies and all that stuff as well. But these are also a barter craft early item. Down here we have more crystals. We'll talk about that when we get to Morning Light in a bit. But yeah, these are just like nodes that you would get because you're using it, not necessarily for the sake of getting it. And then once again, another excavation down here. And down in Behr, what we have connected is longleaf post, because this one has cedar. Cedar sap is extremely high value. And do I have it here? Yeah, cedar sap, kind of hard to come by, actually. As a person who does a lot of gathering as well, almost grew 45, I don't really like gathering this one, so this one is definitely the one I want on the node. Okay, so going down into Grana, there's not too many things that I think are important. These are one of the late game things that you're just like, I just kind of have extra contribution points and I will need to set it on something to make some silver. Knock ore and another knock ore one is worth it. I mostly use these not to sell it, but to make the ingots for my alchemy stones, like every week when I'm doing my splendid taps or something, or shining taps, then that's what I'm doing it for. Another excavation node down here, and going up into Star's End is another trace of nature and copper. The shattered star fragments, they're irrelevant, but I just wanted copper and excavation. This is an expensive connection, by the way, so once again, I told you it's not really, something that I think people should get unless you have extra contribution points. So it's nice to have, but not an early game thing. Odraxia. Down here, we have a lot of things that are unique to the region, which is like Thornwood timbers and saps. Once again, timbers, saps, always high value. And down here, you know how we talked about chicken meat and eggs? We have another one here. Those are very limited. You should get it. Olin's Valley, we have nickel and mithril, high value over here. And I'm convinced this Olin's Valley node doesn't really give as much as the other ones, but I mean, it's still a good choice compared to some other nodes to pick up. So even if I'm convinced this one might be like, this mithril node is not great. I think if Prolobus is watching it, look into this node because it doesn't give as much as the others. And then we have Thornwood and Crypt of Resting Thoughts, another excavation connection over here, and Thornwood for the region exclusive saps and timbers, which are always nice. All right, Duvencrune. The one we want is down here, mithril and trace of nature. So an excavation node, high value. Double mithril and zinc, or double mithril here, and then zinc is a high value knock, kind of like in Grana, that we have a connection to, and then more ores over here. So this one is kind of optional, but the mithril ones are very expensive. To give you an idea, these are like 65,000. They're not super fast to collect, but there's a day you're gonna need mithril. You kind of probably want to have that and just not have to buy it on the market. As far as I know, they're pretty high value. Okay, so other ones up here, kind of more optional if you have the extra contribution. I specifically did a very expensive node connection up here to the lumber camp, literally for the Thuja sap, because I hate collecting that one myself, and it's really just out of the way. So Thuja sap is... Did I connect it to this one? Okay, it's over here. Very expensive node. The timber itself is, it's not the most valuable, but the saps are expensive. So this is an optional connection for other people, but if you need it for alchemy yourself, it's good. Going down into Mountain of Eternal Winter, or Eilton. The ones down here, these three are extremely high value. Let's start off with Jade Starlight Forest, because this one I think is a good one, simply because people might be grinding here for the Labresca Flame and the Embers. Even though it's 2026, I'd recommend just buying it off the market if it's available. But this grind spot is not too bad, so I've invested into it as well. Just node is maxed out at level 20. So Rough Jade and more Snowfield Cedar Sap, always a good one. Birch timbers and Monk's branches are always expensive. And another excavation one for Trace of Nature. And that's about it. So yeah, connecting these over here. Rough Jade is very expensive. Snowfield Cedar Timber is also pretty expensive. Birch is, it fluctuates. And then Monk's Branch is high value as well. So yeah, everything here is definitely worth investing into. Okay, going down into Ulukita. Now this one is I would say this one's a pretty cheap connection. I think everything down here is 1 contribution point, but you know, it involves you having to connect it. So from Asparkin, we have these two and these two connected over here with Tungrad Ruins. You should probably be connecting Tungrad Ruins regardless if you are near the end game, because this node is, like, Tungrad is a very good grind spot. But yeah, a double excavation node for a Trace of Nature and, you know, the rough crystals, which we'll talk about once we get to Morning Light. And then more iron, copper with more crystals, and we will get to that later. Muzgar, we have Dark Seekers, a very solid grind spot as well for more iron ore and crystals. And down here is just, I think, timbers. So yeah, this is all I have. This one's kind of optional. I just had to think of something to use my contribution points on. And Izrahid Highland, more timbers, always nice to have, and saps are expensive. Okay, Mediah, and we're going to be separating Altinova and Tarif. So you see this line right down here from like the Omar Cave to the shore down to the den. As far as I think I set it up, is Tarif is everything over here, whereas anything to the right of this line is probably Altinova. But a lot of these I would say are pretty optional, because there's a lot of out of the way things that most people won't be using on the regular. So like white cedar sap, good one. Sweet potatoes, if you know what you're doing with it, it's good. But the expensive things you probably want to look at are probably timbers, white cedar and regular cedar. Coal is also, you know, we talked about that then when we were down in Keplan, and bloody tree knots. So this is how I have mine connected. I believe the ones you want are over here in Mediah Northern Highlands for the very expensive cedars and saps, but that involves you connecting it all the way. Aside from that, another excavation 3-pointer over here. More zinc is always an expensive node, and half of these are like personal ones, which I don't say people need it, but excavation's always good. Now, Omar Lava Cave, which we have coal, zinc, platinum, and yeah, those are the expensive ones. Down here, we have the Abandoned Iron Mine, which is a double zinc and then more crystals and platinum ore. Once again, very expensive, which I believe that is either connected to one or the other. So yeah, a lot of the ores go into here. Platinum is very expensive, and so that's what I want. To the right, we have the Veterans Canyon and the Gorgo Rock Belt. I'm going to be honest, I don't really know why I have it, because I've had this node going on for the longest time. Elder Tree Timbers, I currently have 1.4 million just going off. Fun fact, this used to be 3 million, and then I started mass processing it for the longest time. I was just like, oh, I want to level up my processing one day, and then I got to Guru 48, and then after a while, I'm just like, I want to play the game again instead of AFK processing all day. So yeah, here we are. That's just trying to boost those numbers. Is it good though? Not really. Let's see. More Elder Tree stuff. One thing I had before was the one for Bag of Muddy Water and Purified Water. It's mostly because I didn't want to, you know, gather it myself. You could buy it from the vendor, you could buy it from the central market as well, but I was also lazy and didn't want to do it. But we found some other stuff to connect, so I don't think this one's a bad thing. It's just for the lazy. So down in Sangren Bazaar, we have Kaposha connected because I wanted more copper ore. Rough opal is kind of expensive as well. And then down here we have Pilgrim's Haven, and I have more iron ore. So this is what the storage looks like. Just a bunch of ores. We had cactus going because I was using it for at some point, and then I was like, I don't remember what I was doing with it, and then I just took the node off. But in case I ever need cactus sap for some reason, I just have it. But yeah, opal, expensive. Ore is always good for wherever you're at in the game. Valencia, I have the plantation going with date palms in particular. I don't really remember why. I think I was like crafting something, but I don't remember what I was doing with it, but I was using it for some sort of crafting. Otherwise, it's an optional node. I probably wouldn't really recommend it. Arehaza, I still have Gavinia Volcano Zone connected for vanadium and titanium ore. This is a little bit less relevant nowadays, simply because back in the day, if you knew what you were doing with these, it was very profitable. So titanium and vanadium used to be able to craft monos accessories. This was way before pre-own existed. And so I was making my own to start slamming, and that's what I was doing for years. And it's not a bad node. These are still pretty expensive, but they're not worth as much anymore because pre-owned exists now. So I also keep it for the rough blue and violet crystals, which I think we're going to talk about really soon. I talked about how I have a lot of these nodes with crystals. Why are they good? Let's talk about that. All right, so we are in morning light right now, and I have a bunch of nodes connected here, and a lot of these are mostly traces, ores, and timbers. So you can just find the ones. Yeah, all of these are ores, timbers. Yeah, that's about it. So you're probably looking at this as like, oh, that's where all the crystals and stuff go. So if you have your Royal Workshop connected, if you know how this works and you're not a new player, basically, if you click it, you could craft various items, and sometimes they require a lot of those crystals, and that's literally what I use it for. I have a video talking about Royal Workshops in detail. I'll leave it in the description if you care to watch it. It's kind of like out of the way, and so it's just kind of there if you want to have it set up and look at it every now and then. But a lot of these are, just going into here and then crafting the materials and then turning it into, silver at some point. It's just kind of like, how you're crafting, but with extra steps. That's Royal Workshops in a nutshell. Every now and then you get something rare, and it's like, oh, cool. And then that's about it. Is it really good? Not really. I mean, it's just kind of nice to have. So, yeah. Next, we're going to talk about the 3 towns. This whole left side was Landed in Morning Light Part 2. And then these 3 towns were Landed in Morning Light Part 1. If you're a new player, this is kind of irrelevant, but they just came out in different time periods. So it's like, here we have Nampo, and then this one is Del Bol and Nose Payette County. So let's sort them by towns to make it easier. And here we have the Trace of Nature excavation node, always good. And then I have this connected just when I do fat trade route, like the trading, when I do that every like 6 months or something. So this town, it doesn't really have anything important. I just kind of sort them differently, but there's something that was just nice to have. Did I see something? There's an NPC that needs dialogue. All right, so the important nodes in here are the ones that give excavation. Every now and then you'll get a forest crystal. These are extremely important just because people who are life skillers will probably need them. And Crystal of Harmonies for people who are looking to make the full-on damage crystals for Macalods and Ultimates. So Ultimate Hooms, Ultimate Macalods, always good. Aside from that, there's just like traces and, various crystals, which are not as relevant now in 2026 as they were in 2023, I believe, when they came out. So, like, this is what it looks like when you're just collecting all these random crystals. The ones that matter are Harmony and Forest. These are probably still the more relevant ones. Decimation is good, and Bitterness is very niche, and Darkness is, I'm pretty sure that one's kind of irrelevant nowadays. But anyway, it's still good to have it if you're crafting. You aren't really profiting. If you're crafting the crystals, you're breaking even. So, like, in case you lose the crystal for some reason, you could just make another one. The county over here, we just have a bunch of random nonsense. At one point, I had this pier connected because I wanted to make the new boat in there, but now I was like, I want to do something else. So I just have the blueprints going off. I have more timbers, more saps going on over here, and just, probably an excavation node somewhere over around here. So that's what I have. And I think we have one more. So we have Edania. So, Edania, there's really maybe one node that's worth it here, and it's the Ancient Ruins. So the region exclusive, you'll get Caprous Tree Sap and Caprous Tree Timbers, and these are what you use. They've added more things to craft with them over time, but it's used to make mostly the Edania Harmony elixirs, and you know there are a few house furnishings that you can make nowadays, but I think a majority of it is using the sap for elixirs. Everything else is just kind of like on the way that I thought were pretty decent. This one is an excavation node. It is kind of an expensive connection, like 1, 2, and then connecting the node itself. So 3. But yeah, Ancient Ruins is the only good one. I believe they're adding a new town connecting, like for part 2, so it might be a little bit different next time. But yeah, aside from that, the only thing you should probably connect is down here. I actually have Great Red Spot, so this is the new group grind spot for Edania. This is the node you want to connect, and I just kind of had that to level up the node every now and then, but it's not super important. You could probably stop at Ancient Ruins, and what you're going to get down here is pretty expensive timbers. The tree sap is, well, it's not as much as it was before, but it's still pretty good, and you probably want to have those. So let me see, did I talk about everything? I'm pretty sure I talked about every region and all the nodes that I have connected. If you were thinking about doing any sailing and bartering in the future, my recommendation would be start connecting these nodes right here. This one, this island, and these two, because these will allow you to get the blueprints for your Carrack if you are trying to make it yourself. So you might want to get the blueprints from these 4 nodes early on, but if anything, you should probably have this island connected. Not so much for the node, but if you are grinding Sakraya lower, this one is the node that connects it. So really weird, but it is what it is. So that's why I have this connected. Other connections to Akila's Eye and back to town is just literally trade connections. So you could probably take all of these off if you're not using it. I just didn't really know what else to do with it, so I just left it there. I think that's it. We talked about all the important nodes, and yeah, I think that's it. So with that said, that's everything. Most of the recap that we're going to talk about: timbers, expensive; ores, saps, excavation nodes for traces, and you know, anything else that you think might be worth getting. But ultimately, if you're going to set up your own node line, I would just pick up the stuff that are bottlenecks for you. If you do cooking and alchemy, I guarantee you will have a bottleneck of something. Make sure a worker is on that node. Anyway, that's all. Thanks so much for watching. Once again, if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Would love to see you come back. We got a bunch of things to talk about in the near future, upcoming events, and just everything that's going on. So I'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace.